You try to eat right, you add exercise to your life, and you even see results on the scale. But there is one problem that just won't go away: stubborn fat in the abdominal area. Have you ever wondered why? Because we are often fighting the wrong enemy. We see the fat that we can touch, the subcutaneous fat. But we're talking about another, much more dangerous, internal fat. This is visceral fat. It is adipose tissue located deep in the abdominal cavity that literally envelops our vital organs: the liver, intestines, and pancreas. Here's what you need to understand. This fat is actively preventing you from losing weight. It releases hormones that increase your appetite and command your body to store even more fat. It is precisely this fat that makes subcutaneous fat so stubborn. But its main danger is not even that. It causes what doctors call chronic inflammation. A study conducted by Harvard Medical School with 2,500 elderly people in 2024 revealed that individuals with high levels of visceral fat had a 65% higher level of systemic inflammation. Researchers found that visceral fat produces inflammatory agents. They are also called pro-inflammatory cytokines and adipokines. In simple terms, cytokines are molecules that spread inflammation throughout your body. They are directly linked to an increased risk of developing type 2 diabetes, heart and vascular diseases, and even some types of cancer. And adipokines disrupt your metabolism, block satiety signals, and increase your resistance to insulin. This is precisely why you are not losing weight. But here is the good news, and I want you to hear this very clearly. Despite all its danger, visceral fat is much more responsive to treatment than stubborn subcutaneous fat. You can get rid of it more effectively and faster if you know exactly which metabolic switches in your body to activate. This is what we will talk about. I will share with you a clear, science-based plan of 6 principles that specifically target internal fat. For your convenience, we will go in reverse order. We'll start with principle number 6 and gradually work our way to the most important one. Number 1. The first 4 principles are behavioral and physical actions that kickstart the fat-burning process. And principles number 2 and number 1 are foods, natural antidotes, that help neutralize inflammation and cleanse the body. Before we begin, I would be grateful if you could write in the comments what city you are from and how old you are. This helps me to better understand our geography and prepare materials that will be useful specifically for you. I carefully read all your comments. So let's begin. The fundamental principle in the fight against internal fat is consistency. We often fall into a trap. We look for the perfect plan. We study complex workouts, go on strict diets, and think, this is the solution to all my problems. We try, suffer for a couple of days, and then give up. I want you to understand, the problem is not your willpower, but the approach itself. The truth is that the best plan is the one you can stick to long term. Consistency always beats intensity. Imagine this: a grueling, heavy workout, after which your whole body aches, is like a strong but short downpour. It passes and it's over. But a pleasant daily walk at a comfortable pace is like a stream that flows constantly and over time can wear away even the hardest stone. Visceral fat is exactly such a stone. It has been accumulating for years. It cannot be taken by storm in a single workout, but it is extremely vulnerable to constant regular impact. When you move every day, even moderately, you change your body's hormonal balance. You send it a signal. We are shifting from storage mode to energy expenditure mode. Start using the reserves. This regular signal directly targets visceral fat, causing it to melt away first. Science confirms this. Take, for example, a large-scale report by the American Association of Retired Persons from 2023. They analyzed the health data of more than 15,000 of their members over the age of 60. The results were unequivocal. The group of people who chose pleasant and moderate activity for themselves, be it walking, gardening, swimming, or dancing, and stuck to it for at least 5 days a week, had on average 40% lower levels of visceral fat than those who exercised rarely but intensely or not at all. So how can you apply this knowledge today? Use a simple but effective psychological trick, the linking method. You don't need to force yourself to go to the gym. Instead, take something you already love to do every day and add movement to it. Do you love listening to music or audiobooks? Excellent. Turn on your player and go for a 40-minute walk in the park. Do you watch an evening series or the news? Don't sit still. Get on an exercise bike or simply march in place in front of the television. Do you call your children or grandchildren every day? Put on headphones and talk while walking around the room or around the house. You are simply making your favorite activity even more beneficial. That is the secret to true long-term consistency. Now let's move on to the next principle and touch on one of the painful questions. Why do the vast majority of diets ultimately fail? Why, after weeks of restrictions, does the weight and belly fat come back? The answer lies in the mistake upon which almost all popular diets are built. They confuse the concept of a reasonable deficit with aggressive starvation. Most people, upon hearing the word deficit, often go to extremes. They drastically cut calories, skip breakfast or dinner, and subsist on nothing but kefir or grapefruit. It seems logical. The less you eat, the faster you lose weight. But this is not just unpleasant and difficult. For our body, especially in mature age, it is counterproductive. When you starve yourself, your body doesn't think, "Great, time to burn fat." It enters emergency mode. Its reaction is, "Hard times have come. The energy source has run out. I need to urgently slow down the metabolism to conserve resources and hold on to every gram of fat with a death grip." In this state, to get quick energy, the body begins to burn the most accessible thing, muscle tissue, and visceral fat, as a valuable strategic reserve for a long famine, is saved for last. As a result, you lose muscle, slow down your metabolism, and become even more prone to gaining fat in the future. So what is the correct strategy? Science gives us a very clear answer. Let's turn to a 2024 report from the Mayo Clinic on the metabolic health of older adults. In the study, a group of 1,200 participants who reduced their daily intake by only 300 to 500 calories showed 52% better results in reducing visceral fat specifically compared to the group on aggressive, low-calorie diets. Why such a colossal difference? There are two reasons. First, an improvement in insulin sensitivity. The group with a moderate deficit saw this indicator improve by 30%. In simple terms, their body's cells began to effectively use sugar from the blood instead of sending it to fat stores. This directly neutralizes the harmful effects of the adipokenes we talked about earlier. Second, the activation of autophagy. A small calorie deficit is a mild, beneficial stress that triggers a spring cleaning process in the body. Your body begins to recycle old, damaged cells and cellular debris. This process directly helps to reduce systemic inflammation in the body by lowering the level of pro-inflammatory cytokines. So how do you apply this in practice? Starting with your next meal, do not reduce the size of your plate. Partially replace its contents. For example, you usually serve yourself a portion of a side dish, say mashed potatoes, rice, or pasta. A simple rule: replace half of that side dish with vegetables. For instance, with broccoli, cauliflower, green beans, or a fresh vegetable salad. The plate will remain full. Thanks to the volume and fiber, you will feel just as full, but you will imperceptibly create that healthy deficit of 300 to 400 calories. Understand me correctly. A calorie deficit is the foundation. It creates the right conditions in the body. It reduces inflammation and improves insulin function. But researchers agree that when it comes to visceral fat specifically, dietary changes alone are not enough. To truly speed up the process, the right physical activity is necessary. In 2024, researchers from the Johns Hopkins School of Medicine published a meta-analysis that put an end to many debates. They analyzed data from 84 separate clinical trials involving more than 20,000 people. The goal was singular: to find the most effective way to reduce visceral fat specifically. The conclusions were unequivocal. Aerobic exercise is one of the most effective tools for achieving this goal. While a calorie deficit helps reduce overall weight, aerobic exercise has a superior effect specifically in burning off deep internal fat. The analysis showed that groups that combined a moderate calorie deficit with regular aerobic exercise demonstrated a 45% greater reduction in markers of visceral fat compared to those who only followed a diet. So what is aerobic exercise in practice? It is any rhythmic, continuous activity that makes your heart beat a little faster and your breathing become deeper. And as we've already discussed when talking about the principle of consistency, the ideal duration for such a session to aim for is 40 to 45 minutes. This is the length of time that allows the body to switch from burning quick carbohydrates to using fat reserves. Specialists from Johns Hopkins Medicine recommend the 3 safest and most effective options for people of mature age. The first option is the stationary bicycle. It is a real lifesaver for the knees, hip joints, and spine, as there is no impact load on them at all. Here, your goal is not speed, but duration. Try to pedal calmly at a comfortable pace for you, aiming for those 40 minutes of continuous movement. The second, a true gold standard of health-improving exercise, is swimming or water aerobics. The water itself supports your body, removing any load from the joints, but at the same time it forces all muscle groups to work. And here, we also aim for the goal of 40 to 45 minutes of continuous, calm swimming. And finally, the simplest and most accessible option for each of us is walking at a moderate pace. What does moderate pace mean? It's the speed at which you feel your breathing has become deeper, but you can still easily maintain a conversation, albeit with a little effort. It is precisely such a 40-minute walk that is easiest to link to listening to your favorite music or audiobook, making a health benefit a part of your enjoyable leisure time. Choose one of these complexes and apply the principle of consistency, gradually moving towards the goal of 40 to 45 minutes of regular sessions. But what's interesting is that the researchers from Johns Hopkins identified not one, but 2 types of exercise. And the second type, which we are about to discuss, can produce an even more pronounced effect, especially for those with little time and more capacity for exertion. But before we continue, a small request. If the information I am sharing seems useful to you, you can help me bring it to other people who may need it just as much. Just press the like button. I release new detailed materials twice a week. Be sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss anything. Now let's talk about the second type of exercise. This is high-intensity interval training. And I want to ask you right away, please do not be intimidated by this name. When we talk about health-improving exercise, it has nothing to do with grueling sports. We are not talking about running, jumping, or any other high-impact activity that could damage your joints. The essence of this principle is simple and safe. At its core, it is simply alternating your pace. You switch between short bursts of activity, where you work a little harder than usual, and periods of rest or light recovery exercise. What does this look like in practice? Let's take a safe example. The stationary bicycle. You are seated, you are stable, and there is no risk of falling. You pedal for 3 minutes at an easy conversational pace. Then, for 1 minute, you slightly increase the resistance or speed, just enough to feel your breathing become deeper, without overexertion. And then you return to 3 minutes of a calm pace. That's it. This simple cycle is interval training. But why is this method so effective? When you perform aerobic work, your body uses energy evenly, but when you increase the pace, you quickly deplete the energy stores in your muscles, and then during the next rest phase, the body panics and is forced to turn to its reserves, that is, to fat deposits, including the most accessible of them, visceral fat. It is this metabolic switch that makes the interval approach so effective. And the Johns Hopkins meta-analysis clearly confirmed this with numbers. The scientists identified 3 key advantages. First, interval training was just as effective at burning visceral fat as long aerobic sessions, but participants achieved the same result while spending 20 to 30% less time. Second, the alternating principle led to a 35% improvement in insulin sensitivity. This is important because it directly strikes at the root of the problem by neutralizing the harmful effects of adipokines. Third, this type of exercise triggers a process where your body continues to burn calories at an increased rate for several hours after you've finished your workout. This is the power of proper physical activity. Now you have a full arsenal of physical tools, from consistent aerobic sessions to highly effective interval training. We have discussed how to use movement to activate the right mechanisms in the body and prepare the ground for change. And now let's add natural compounds from foods that specifically target inflammation and help the body use fat as fuel even more effectively. We're talking about the regular consumption of green tea, which is rich in special compounds called catechins. Catechins are natural antioxidants found in the tea leaf. For many years, scientists viewed green tea as a healthy beverage, but the mechanism of its fat-burning action was not fully understood. Now, thanks to modern science, we know the secret. Researchers from the Keio University School of Medicine in Japan, a country that is a world leader in longevity, published an interesting report in 2024. They conducted a 12-week study with 1,800 elderly participants. The participants were divided into 2 groups. One drank regular beverages, and the other drank beverages enriched with catechins from green tea. The results were astonishing. The group that consumed catechins showed an average of 35% greater reduction in visceral fat specifically compared to the control group. Scientists found that catechins deliver a 1-2 punch to internal fat. First, they help block some of the enzymes in the intestine that are responsible for absorbing fat from food. Imagine you are installing a smart filter that lets all the good stuff through but holds back excess fat. This directly helps to restore a healthy metabolism, which, as we remember, is disrupted by harmful adipokines. Second, these compounds stimulate the process of thermogenesis, that is, the production of heat in the body. For this process, the body is forced to spend extra energy, which it takes directly from fat reserves. In simple terms, you start to burn a few more calories just by going about your daily business. Start by replacing just 1 cup of your morning coffee or black tea with a cup of quality green tea. it is best to choose varieties rich in catechins, such as the Japanese sencha or matcha. Make this small step your new healthy habit. This is an effective principle, but it only prepares the ground for our final and most important step. And it sounds deceptively simple. Eat more colorful vegetables. We are talking about bright, rich colors on your plate. Carrots, spinach, broccoli, sweet red peppers. Why is this so important? Because it is in these foods that carotenoids are found, natural compounds that strike at the two main problems we talked about at the very beginning. First is inflammation. We remember that visceral fat is a source of pro-inflammatory cytokines. Carotenoids are natural antioxidants that directly neutralize inflammation in the body. Confirmation of this comes from a long-term study completed by the National Institute on Aging in 2025. For 10 years, specialists monitored the health of more than 10,000 elderly people. The result was stunning. Participants with the highest levels of carotenoids in their blood had 60% less visceral fat. Second is a disrupted metabolism. Researchers from the National Institute on Aging found that a diet rich in carotenoids helps restore a healthy metabolic response, directly counteracting the harmful influence of adipokines. Your action plan is brilliant in its simplicity. You don't need to remember all the colors and names. At your next main meal, look at your plate and ask yourself two questions. Do vegetables take up at least half of my plate? And is at least half of these vegetables colorful? This could be the red-orange group, carrots, tomatoes, sweet peppers, or the dark green group, spinach, broccoli, cabbage. Just follow this simple rule. For many years, visceral fat may have seemed like an invisible and invincible enemy to you. It might have been a source of frustration when, despite all your efforts, you saw no results. But today, everything has changed. You are no longer acting blindly. You know your enemy by sight. They are the pro-inflammatory cytokines that harm your health and the adipokines that disrupt your metabolism. And more importantly, you now have 6 truly effective science-based principles. You have clear recommendations on exercise from Johns Hopkins and the American Association of Retired Persons. You know how catechins from green tea and carotenoids from vegetables work. This information is your greatest asset. It gives you back a sense of control over your health. But please do not make the biggest mistake. Do not try to implement everything at once. This is not a one-time action, but a gradual process. True, long-term success is built on consistency. And it is here that we must remember the principle we spoke of at the beginning, persistence. Your task is to start implementing these principles gradually but regularly. Start, for example, with a walk, but make it your daily habit. Start with the half-plate rule, but apply it to every main meal. Replace 1 cup of coffee with green tea, but make it your new morning ritual. The principle of persistence is not about what to do, but how to do it. It is the glue that binds all the other principles, a sensible deficit, aerobic exercise, interval training, and the right foods, into a single working system. This is how, step by step, you build the foundation of your health. Now I want to hear from you. Which of the principles we talked about today did you find most interesting, and which one would you like to try first? Share your opinion in the comments below. I read all your answers. Thank you for your time and trust. Be healthy.